In the darkest corners of Japan's prison system, one man defied every wall, every lock, and every chain they threw at him. His name was Yoshie Shiratori, the man who escaped prison not once, not twice, but 4 times. Was he a criminal mastermind, a symbol of injustice, or simply unstoppable? Born in 1907 in Amori Prefecture, his early life gave him no hint of legend he'd become. But as Japan fell into a war and depression, Yoshie found himself trapped into a brutal system, accused of crimes, betrayed by the courts, and locked away in cells, meant to break man's soul. Now let's go back to where it all begins. Yoshie was born in 1907 in Amori Prefecture, in northern Japan. He wasn't born into crime. He worked as a fisherman, then a laborer. He was just a man trying to survive in a collapsing economy. But Japan in the 1930s was hard. Jobs was success, corruption everywhere. And soon Yoshie was accused of crime he swore he didn't commit, the theft and the murder of a man in Amori. Despite the lack of solid evidence, he was arrested, beaten, and sentenced to life in Amori prison. That's where it began. Shiratori was imprisoned at Amori prison in 1936 for a felony murder charge, and after studying the guard's routine for months, he escaped by picking his cell lock with a metal wire that was wrapped around the washroom bucket, provided for bathing, and escaped through a cracked skylight. Before escaping, he placed the floorboards onto his futon to fool the passing guards into thinking he was still asleep. Police recaptured Shiratori after 3 days while he was stealing supplies from a hospital. Sentenced to life in prison for escaping and attempted theft, he was transferred to Akita prison in 1941. At Akita prison, Shiratori was placed in a cell specially designed for escape artists, featuring high ceiling, one small skylight, and smooth copper walls. Nevertheless, Shiratori was able to scale the walls and noticed the wood holding the window bars were beginning to rot. Every night he would climb up to loosen the vent until he finally managed to pry away the wood and open the skylight. Knowing prison staff would be able to hear his footsteps on the roof, Shiratori waited until a stormy night to climb the walls and escape on June 14, 1942. 3 months later, he showed up at the house of the guards to ask for help, as he was one of the only people who had shown kindness and respect to Shiratori during his stay in Akita prison. However, the guards called the police and Shiratori was arrested and sent back to prison. During the winter of 1942, Shiratori was transferred to Abashiri prison in the northern Hokkaido, the country's northernmost prison. He was thrown into a open cell exposed to the extreme cold, allowing the guards to beat him down whenever he stood up. Later, he was placed in specially made handcuffs, taking nearly 2 hours to unlock by specialists who came once per week so that he could bath. When the guards delivered meals, however, he would drip miso soup on the handcuffs and food slot, both of which eventually became corroded due to the salt content of the miso soup, allowing Shiratori to break them. Then on August 26, 1944, he dislocated both of his shoulders, enabling him to fit out of the narrow food slot in his cell door and escaped the prison, using wartime blackout as cover. After living in an abandoned mine deep in the mountains for 2 years, he descended to a nearby village and learned of the surrender of the Japan. However, he was captured yet again after fatally stabbing a farmer who attacked him after he was caught stealing a tomato from his farm. For his previous escapes and the farmer's murders, Shiratori was sentenced to death by Sapporo District Court. At the Sapporo prison, he was placed in a specially designed cell with high ceilings and windows smaller than his head. However, due to the prison guards at Sapporo having so much faith in it that they have no longer bothered to handcuff Shiratori, and that they paid so much attention towards the ceiling escapes, they neglected the floors. In 1947, he dug his way out by making a tunnel with some of the miso soup bowls. After years of freedom, it's said that Shiratori was offered a cigarette by a police officer in a park. Emotionally touched by the kindness, Shiratori admitted he was an escaped convict and offered to be turned in. He was arrested and tried once again, but the High Court of Sapporo, having reviewed his case, decided that the farmer's death was a result of acting in self-defense. As a result, the court revoked his death sentence, instead sentencing him 20 years for his escapes. Shiratori requested to be imprisoned in Tokyo was also granted, and he spent 14 years in Fuchu prison until December 1961, when he was released on parole. Later, he turned to Amori to reunite with his daughter. Although they were not close, his wife had died while he was in prison. Shiratori lived over another decade working odd jobs to survive. He died after suffering a heart attack in 1979 at the age of 71. So this was the sad end of Shiratori. I think this story is pretty much insane. It's really interesting. I'm really interested in looking into prison breaks stories, and this is one of the most insane stories that I have read it about them. I think they should make a Hollywood movie about it. I really hope you have a great day and wait for the next video.